Okay. Looks good. Can you raise your hand if you want other users that are searching Google to find your Mashup and Maps API sites? Okay. Can you raise your hand if you're actually using KML or GeoRSS today in your Mashup? Nice. Okay. But still, there were less hands in my last question than the previous two. And that's exactly the problem that we want to help you with and the problem that we're trying to solve. So there's a disconnect today between all those users that are searching on Google for hotels and restaurants and real estate and photos and you name it. Lots of local queries of people that want more and more to search for local stuff around their house or where they are. And on the other side, we have this vast amount of GeoWeb, of Mashup API sites and other local content that I've kind of reviewed this morning. So just for those of you who missed, we have those Maps API site with one type of geo-content, and then we have other innovative ways of geo-content like Angelina Jolie tattooing on her forearm the Latin long of her kids. So people want to find this data, but today we have a disconnect. And that's exactly what we're trying to solve with GeoSearch. We want to bridge this disconnect and allow those users to find your content using Google search and either using Google Maps search or using Google Earth search. So hundreds of millions of users searching for content, and we want them to find it. And if you think about it, and again, I'll just repeat a bit what I said earlier today, it's kind of like the early days of the web, right? We have on the upper side the history of the web and how we had markup languages and then syndication formats and then browsers that showed us the content and internet sites that lived inside a browser, and then we tried to organize the data in directory structure. It wasn't so long ago. It seems very far away. And then when we had too much data, we switched to the search metaphor. And the same thing happened today on the GeoWeb. We're seeing more and more data coming from you guys, and it's kind of almost impossible to order it in this very directory structure way like some people trying today. And the question is, where are we going with this? So for those of you who haven't been, can I just have a raise of hands who haven't attended the 1 p.m. session? So no? Wow, everybody was there. Cool. So you saw the cool queries. I'll just recap a couple of important points that it's important for me to explain if we're all here. So I can forget about the anecdotes and jump right into the serious queries. So again, our results today are at the bottom of this page. Over time, you'll see those results more and more prominent because you can imagine if a user is doing a query for windsurfing places in San Francisco, he's less interested in where can he buy windsurfing equipment, but he'd want to get the windsurfing beaches and spots. So that's where you'll see our content. And again, this is all either KML or GeoRSS from all over the web. Just to briefly walk you through what we're actually seeing. This is the name of the placemark. We're only supporting placemark at the moment, so whatever you search for, you see a placemark that designates the point in which the data exists. That's the name of the document that you have in either your KML or GeoRSS. So it's very important to have meaningful names, so when the user clicks through or when the user debating whether he should click through, he can sort of see relevant doc names rather than GE1702KMZ. Another, names like Bay Area windsurfing might be a bit more useful and instructive to the user, so he can actually get the full picture while he's browsing the search results. So that's the doc name. Here we have the domain name in which we found the query, like we have today on web search. And I want to touch a bit on our info window. So we made a couple of changes over the past couple of weeks in the info window that I hope I can communicate to you today. So that's, again, the title of the place mark. We have the domain name in which we found it, how many place marks are in the doc, just to give the user some sort of indication on how much content that we have. And then, again, a click-through to the content. We used to snippet the result, which didn't give us the best user experience, and now we're non-snippeting it. So that's another important point to understand. You can put any HTML links that you want in the info bubble, and users can click on it straight from the search results that they're getting to go immediately to the original context in which you build the geo content. And that's another improvement that we've made. So that's what we want to do. We want to organize the world's georeference information. And we can't do it if you only use JavaScript API. We need you to, you can keep using your JavaScript, and Pamela will talk about it more later, but we need you to put aside some KML or GeoRSS data so we can actually index your content and bring you traffic. So we announced earlier that we're adding atom attribution, and we'll cover it later exactly how we're doing it, but you can specify in the KML who's the author and what's the link back you want us to take the user to, and you can always do it in GeoRSS because atom attribution is built in there. So those are the different types of ways that you have today for us to index you and to get into the index. So hopefully when you do it, we can search traffic. We can send search traffic your way, and we can bring you targeted, relevant, quality users that are searching for the content that you have to contribute. If this wasn't enough, let me just enumerate a couple of other reasons why this is positive and why you should go ahead back to your laptops and code KML and GeoRSS data into your Maps API sites. So the first and obvious reason is traffic. We want to send you traffic like a regular web search engine is doing, so you can get the relevant users who are actually looking for a data point that you have in your Maps API site and never heard the name of your site. So one is traffic. The other one is that if you're using KML once and code it once, you can enjoy all worlds. So you can show it on Google Earth and have users share it and link it and send emails to each other with attachments or links to the KML to better visualize it. You can display, we're supporting for a couple of months now, you can display the KML on Google Maps, so a user can type the KML into the search box and just see the KML, or he can just look at your Maps API site and look at the content. And the third addition that we're making to KML and GeoRSS is have them indexed in our GeoSearch index. So you do it once and you enjoy all those free opportunities. And if you're still concerned about, am I exposing too much data? Will this actually be good for me to do? You're always in control. We added the atom attribution tag, so you can specify those two, and that's how it looks in the UI. So if I specify this atom name as the author, which is a child of atom author, then we're actually going to show the name of the author underneath the title. And if I specify the link, the href, the title will become linkable, and the user can just click on it and go back to your site where you want the context to be seen. So that's one. And this is new. It's in the KML 2.2 beta schema, which is available starting yesterday for all you to browse through and to prepare new KMLs. This is a beta, but we promise to respect those atom attribution tags, and you can browse to this link and understand more. You can always choose how much data you want to expose in the KML description or in the GeoRSS description. It's sort of up to you to decide if you want to expose all the data and then sort of entice the user to go to your website, or you don't want to show very little data because the user will think it's not a relevant answer and he wouldn't click through. So it's up to you to sort of design the description and the KML to maximize both relevancy but also click through, like any regular web result. And if you're still concerned, we always promise to respect the old mechanisms of crawling. So this is a picture a user posted in some blog after our Street View launch. And we're not respecting it yet in Street View, but we'll respect it in GeoSearch, I promise. So that's the reasons. And I hope I convince you that that's a good thing to do. So just bear in mind a couple of best practices on how to create your KML and GeoRSS files. So we saw the doc name. Give your doc name a meaningful name. Make sure the item description is relevant, as I've said. Use the attribution that we're now offering. Divide your data in a smart way. You don't want us to index 1 out of 200,7,800 place mark in untitled.doc. You want to divide your KML or GeoRSS to logical files, either based on topic-specific subjects or based on regions with the region-editor utility that we're offering. But bear in mind the final user experience that you want users to see on your data. Put all your files on a sitemap. We're supporting the regular sitemap standard. Just make sure that all your geo files, either KML or GeoRSS, are going to be there, and we can access them and make sure that we actually index them. And lastly, if you want to prevent us from doing something, just put a robot text, and we'll respect it. So with that very brief introduction, and after showing the GeoWeb again, which is pretty awesome in my mind, I hope you can all become part of this big picture, and I will pass it to Pamela to talk about the technical stuff.
All right. So now that you're all pumped up and you're ready to start coding and outputting GeoRSS and KML, I put together a couple strategies to try and help you decide which format to choose and how to go about doing this. And there are some code blocks and technical details in here, but you can try and block them out if you want to. So this is the general steps. First thing we need to do is choose which format. Since we announced today that we're supporting both GeoRSS and KML files in the sitemap, and we'll crawl both, then you have a decision to make which one you want to pick, which one's the most appropriate for data. So you need to do that first. And then once you've decided that, you want to say, all right, do I want to use those files directly in my mashup, or do I want to just output those on the side and keep my mashup using whatever it used before? And then you want to make sure you use attribution properly in your files. You want to make sure when people find your content, they know where it's coming from, and it's linking back to the correct place. And then the final step is just to refer to those files in the sitemap and put have your sitemap in the proper place on your web server. So how to decide between GeoRSS and KML? If you already know GeoRSS and KML and you already have your opinions, then you can just go with those. Here's my take on it. So GeoRSS, if you're already outputting RSS, like maybe you have a blog and your blog talks about cool things you saw all over the world because you're a globetrotter and you want to mark where each of those locations are, well then it makes sense that you would simply modify your RSS right now to be GeoRSS. All you're doing is adding in 1 or 2 elements into that, that RSS output. If generally you're trying to convey updates or most recent items the way that RSS usually does, that's a good idea. If you only ever want to represent point data, and you don't want to go into anything advanced like image overlays or crazy donut polygons, then GeoRSS is satisfactory for you, and you don't need anything more than that, and you may just go with GeoRSS as a format. Otherwise, choose KML. KML is a full geospatial standard. It has the tags to be able to describe a huge amount of things. It can describe animation. If you guys have ever used Google Earth and used the little time slider, it's really cool. It can describe ground overlays, donut polygons, styling of all your icons and your lines and everything. So KML can describe a lot, and if you've got a lot of different types of information or some advanced geospatial information, you probably want to choose KML. Also, obviously, right now, Google Earth only supports KML, so maybe if it's important to you that you output something that people can check out in Google Earth, then that's something you should keep in mind. I guess 2 quick examples of the sort of stuff you might represent with GeoRSS. See from Flickr. All right, so this is Flickr outputs GeoRSS. So this is the technical writer's photo feed. And this is just a bunch of photos, and they've just been marked with locations. So all that Flickr cares about right now, at least, is just the point location. So GeoRSS is a good format for them to output. And then let's see a KML example. So this is the one from our documentation. Looks similar, but this time we've got icon styling. We could also add some polygons here, some ground overlays, stuff like that. So you get a basic idea from that. So once you decided KML or GSS, you have to decide how you want to use that in your mashup. A lot of you people, how many people actually have mashups? Raise your hand. Sweet. All right. So you probably already coded your mashup, and maybe you're happy with it. Maybe you don't want to screw with it too much. So I've got 2 strategies here. First one is to use it directly. In this case, you have your data, in your database or whatnot, and then from that database, you output the KML or the GeoRSS, and then you parse that directly into your mashup, and then you refer to that directly in your sitemap. So in this one, you've got one output that's serving both your mashup and your sitemap. The other way is doing it on the side. You've got your database. You output that in some arbitrary format. Maybe you like JSON. Maybe you like comma-separated values, whatever you like, and you parse it into your mashup. And maybe you're doing this because you want something that's lighter weight than KML, for example. And then from that same database, you output the KML or the GeoRSS, and then you reference that in your sitemap. So these are the 2 general strategies. And they both have their pros and cons. So the first one, using KML or GeoRSS directly, which is having the one format to serve both the mashup and the sitemap. The advantage is it's one format. You only have to maintain one format. Maybe it's less coding that way. Disadvantage, if you've got a map mashup and your map mashup has a lot of data, you probably know that loading data into your mashup can take a while. And sometimes people optimize it by doing things like reducing the size of the file that they're putting in, maybe using something like JSON. So if you're doing that already, you may not want to switch to KML or GeoRSS because you may be afraid that that's going to make your mashup take longer to load. And obviously you don't want to risk having a negative user experience just so that you can have something to put in the sitemap. The other thing is it's not always obvious perhaps how to output KML or GeoRSS for sites using dynamic searches. So if you've got like one of those really cool like housing maps where you've got like dynamic sliders and stuff like that, are you going to be outputting KML every time that they move the slider? I don't know. If you can make that decision, then you're good. So if you decide that you do want to use KML in your mashup directly, there's a couple ways you can do that. A few months ago, we introduced an API function. You guys probably know about it, GeoXML. And it can retrieve a KML stored anywhere on a public server. And it will return back all the overlay objects and all the info bubbles that are in that KML, as well as also that includes ground overlays and like polygons like linear strings. And I showed you the example of that one already. The one I showed you was a Google Maps API example. And it's actually only like 2 lines of code. You probably guys have already seen this. GeoXML equals new GeoXML. You hand it the URL, and then you add the overlay to the map. So I got an example of somebody that's that's using it in their mashup. And if any of you guys were on the Google group last night, I just posted and asked people for examples. So I don't know if any of you guys are in here that gave me these. But this person these are, well, I can't read them, but apparently they're routes in some faraway land. You're welcome to translate. But these are all, if we actually look at the source, you can see these KML files here. And actually, there's even some RSS right here. And then they're simply using a GeoXML right here. So they're just loading in that layer and adding it to the map. So they have actually pretty cool mashup, because what they've done here is basically aggregated a bunch of KML files that are relevant and are good to load on the map together. And I found I think in their sitemap, they actually reference it. So wait, let's check this out. All right. Yeah. See, people are using it. So here, they've actually got it in their sitemap already. So I haven't shown you the sitemap, but this is this person's sitemap. And they do reference, I believe, all of their KML files, which is very nice. So this person gets bonus points from us. We're gonna put them high up in the search results now. And here's another one. Go. Ooh, doo, doo. All right, I'll try this. So this is our black slide. See how much information you can retrieve from this. Resume. Let's resume this. I think I broke it. Should I kill it? Shh, no violence. All right, so where are we? This one? Okay. All right, we're not going to go to that site just in case. If you make sites that killed our thingy, you go down in the search results. And this is the secret of search engine optimization. All right, everyone take notes. All right, so those are two examples of sites that were using GeoXML. The disadvantage right now of using GeoXML is that it's not as fully featured as a lot of people would like it to be. All it does is let you add the overlay to the map. It doesn't give you any access past then. Obviously, we know you want access, more access, so the engineers are working on giving you more methods to access all the markers that are created there and the KML or the GeoRSS that was parsed. So it is a disadvantage of it right now, and you may find in the future as more stuff is added to it that it becomes a more likely candidate for something you'll want to use. Another option is if you want to use it directly, you can just parse it. So KML, it's a subset of XML, so all you have to do is use one of our API-provided XML HTTP request functions, gdownload URL, gxml, to parse out the XML elements of the KML. So you can find the ones you're using, like placemark, and display those elements however you'd like. So this has an advantage. It's the most flexible solution because you're parsing it yourself and you're deciding what you want to do with that data. The disadvantage is it might take time to write your own KML parser. I mean, obviously, it's easy to do place marks, but when you go to things maybe like linear strings, going to overlays, going to network links, then you may find it a lot more difficult. GeoXML does actually support network links, which is a nice touch. But here's the code to do it. I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Get elements by tag name. And then doing whatever you'd like with those. And if you do, there are a bunch of people who've already written some KML parsers out there. I think you could just search our Maps API group, and you'll get some good results. So how to use GeoRSS in your mashup directly? Once again, we can use GGeoXML. When we announced GGeoXML, we said it supports KML and GeoRSS, and a lot of GeoRSS people got really happy. So it's the same thing as before, simply referring to the URL. And I believe it supports all the flavors of GeoRSS, and at least the point elements of them. There are some GeoRSS flavors that have boxes and other sorts of shapes in them, but this won't parse that out. It'll only parse out the points. But it's the same thing. It'll give you an overlay that you can add to your map. And the mashup I showed earlier had a few RSS files in it as well, so they were using the exact same thing. So if you're using GGeoXML, you can intermix KML and GeoRSS without distinguishing between the two. However, once again, if you need more flexibility than GGeoXML can offer you right now, parse it yourself. GeoRSS, though, I will tell you, is a little trickier because those GeoRSS elements have namespaces with them, and namespace parsing isn't the same in IE and Firefox, because you know how they like to be difficult. So you do have to do some checking for the browser when you're parsing out these. So here's some sample code this is for Firefox for parsing out GeoRSS. The other thing about GeoRSS is that there are a couple different versions. So if you're relying on GeoRSS from other people, you may want to check what version of our GeoRSS you're parsing in. But the good thing is there are user extensions out there. Somebody wrote mGeoRSS, which is a whole extension that parses GeoRSS for you. So if you're interested, don't worry about writing your own parser. Go take that one. He already wrote it for you. And it's got everything you need in there. So this is the most flexible solution. Disadvantage, it may take time to write your own parser or time to go to that guy's site and steal his. And here's an example. Let's see if this one kills it. Some of you may have actually seen this one before. This is a pretty cool one. So this guy is parsing in GeoRSS, and he could have used GGeoXML, except that he's doing different markers for each of the, he's parsing out the magnitude from the feed, and then doing a different marker depending on the magnitude. So here's an example where you want to write your own parser, because you want to do some arbitrary styling depending on what you find in that feed. But yeah, so he's using his own, he just wrote his own parser. I looked through the code this morning. You could take his code as well. It's all about sharing, people, sharing. So that was using it directly. The other option is you already wrote your mashup, you're happy with the way it's parsing things, but you want to get indexed in search, then you can just output it on the side. So the advantages here is that you can make independent decisions on the KML that you're going to output for your, or the GeoRSS that you're going to output for your sitemap versus the format that you want to, the data that you want to parse into your mashup. Because you may want to output something differently into your KML. Like on your mashup, you may have some really cool info windows that have like dynamically changing tabs and flash or all sorts of crazy stuff going on, right? You probably don't want that to be in your KML file. You just want the information that the user is going to need that's going to entice them to go to your site and check out what else your mashup can inform them about. So this way you can make independent decisions on what that place mark stuff is going to look like. The disadvantages here that you are maintaining two data output formats, one for your mashup, one for your sitemap. So that may be a little bit more coding, a little more maintenance, checking that both of them are constantly working. So how to do it? So here's if you want to output KML from your mashup data on the side, I've got 3 different ways here. Basically, you want to write a script. We've got some PHP, and I think this article is out, but I'm not sure. If it's not, it's going to be on the site soon, and it's on code.google.com. And the article is using PHP to output MySQL KML. So you don't have to worry about writing the code yourself. We've got it in PHP 4, PHP 5, and a couple different ways. And so here's just an example of just iterating through a database and creating place marks and adding them to this XML document, right? So once you write this script, maybe it's PHP, maybe it's Python, it's whatever your favorite language is, you could set up a cron job at a certain interval, maybe weekly, daily, that produces KML files and puts them at certain URLs. Or your sitemap could actually point to the script that outputs that KML or that GeoRSS, and you would do, or the KML, and you would do that if you have highly dynamic data and you want it so that every time you're crawled, you want them to get the latest stuff. And then if you have a highly static mashup, which is possible, you could just produce that KML once using however you'd like. Maybe it's even a MyMap. That's possible, although MyMaps are already indexed, so I guess you get double love, maybe. So here's the sample code. And then similar thing with GeoRSS. You may want to trigger creating the GeoRSS after something like a blog post or a photo post, or with a cron job. And then in order to do so, if you can modify, if you want to do any GeoRSS output, I recommend going online and finding scripts that already output RSS, and then it's really easy to modify those to output GeoRSS. So I found this cool tutorial that tells you how to output RSS, and then I simply added in the GeoRSS point, which is like the 5th line down, and that'll give me my GeoRSS. So yeah, pretty simple. I know, and there's also plugins. I think there's a plugin for WordPress to output GeoRSS. So if you are like, you have a blog, you may want to look and see if there's already plugins for whatever blog you're using. Okay, so now you've done the outputting. Make sure while you've done it that you're using the correct attribution. Lior talked about you want to be attributed. You don't want to put your data out there and have nobody know that you created that and that it should link back to your site and stuff like that. So in KML, they just announced the Atom elements. So you've got author, name, and link. And so the link, you probably want to link back to your mashup page. And these are all from the Atom syndication format. And here's an example. We saw it earlier for Harry Potter. And then GeoRSS, I'm sure you guys have seen RSS feeds. Oh, and in both of these, you can do it per document or per entry. So in RSS, you can have it like the author it's usually the author of every entry. In KML, you can have it per document, like we saw before, or you can have it per feature, like per place mark. And that depends, if you have various authors per your features and you want to credit those. So you can see in this example, just using the author and the name and the link. All right, and then finally, you've done it. So you want to reference it in a sitemap. So this is a sitemap. It's really simple. If you're curious to see what other sitemaps look like, just go to random sites, and they're usually stored under domain.com/sitemap.xml. I've been stalking sitemaps lately. So it's just a URL set root tag, and then you can define a bunch of URLs underneath that. You can define one file, or if you've got a huge amount of data and you divide it into topics, or you've got maybe you have a blog and that's in GeoRSS, and you have this other mashup and that's in KML, you're welcome to refer to multiple files. I've got like 2 KMLs and then an RSS in there, and that's fine. We'll crawl through and we'll index everything. So that's it. Conclusion. You want to somehow have your data that's in your mashup in KML or GeoSSS. Whether or not that's what you're directly putting into your mashup, you want to have it out there in that format. So pick the format that's best for you and the technique that is easier for your mashup. And then construct your KML or your GeoRSS according to the best practices. Having good info bubble content and having a good name for your document and using your attribution correctly. And then the users will find you and come back to your mashup. Because the whole point of everything is trying to get more people to come back to your site. And we're just trying to help. So hopefully you go out and do it. And then I can get more examples for the slides. All right? Sweet. questions.
So we'll be happy to take some questions if you have any. Just go to the mic, ask a question, and we'll be happy to help. Anybody? Questions?
Where's the beer?
Yeah, I guess the biggest issue for me is that when you're generating dynamic data, and I think you're aware of this problem, that it's really hard to generate these static files. And so I guess I'm really hoping that there'll be some sort of solution that allows you to regionalize, KML files or something so that, I can generate these files and make them relatively efficient and interactive, so we can deal with dynamic data.
Well, you do region-based.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was about dynamic data and how can we handle it. So this is not so optimized to dynamic data, and we still have ways to go in terms of indexing dynamic data and the frequency and how we deal with it. What you can do today is to apply our originator that will automatically, and it's available, it's open code, and you can just search for originator, will automatically divide your KML dataset to region-based KMLs, and link them to each other. So you can, first of all, divide your KML very nicely to different KMLs, and then on Google Earth, for example, will automatically kind of show the upper points, the more important points on the top, and then as you zoom in, you'll get more and more relevant dynamic data.
Sorry, I came in a little late, so I apologize if this has already been covered. My question is that if I don't go to the local.google.com, and if I just go to the regular Google search, then the KML data will show up and then it will show up as the KML file, or it will show up as the file that my mashup that uses that KML file.
So the question was about where exactly will KML results will be shown. So currently, everything that we showed you guys is available in maps.google.com. So in the map-based local search box. For now, there's no integration into the regular google.com web search component. What you can do today on google.com is do a file type restrict on a KML type and search for just KML data files, but you cannot do the geographic queries that we've shown you. It's only available on maps.google.com and in the search box in Google Earth, which is something that a lot of people are not aware of. So you have a search box on the top of Google Earth. If you type any query into it, it will bring you back two sets of results. One is the red pins local results, and the other one is the blue pins user-generated content.
So it will only show up on the blue pin user-generated content, right? Our KML file. And it will not, and unless we provide a link back to our page, it will not show up with, it will not, there will be no way to link back to our own page.
So the default behavior is that we will link back to where we found the KML.
Oh,
if you wanted different behavior than the default, we allow you to use attribution and kind of direct us to what's the best part in your site that you want us to direct, or if you want to point to other side because it's a feed. So you can control the experience.
Yeah, you can use the Atom link. Atom link href equals your mashup.com. And just have that in your KML file, and then it will link back to your mashup instead.
And anything that we can do on our current info HTML window, we can do on the we put that on KML.
No, well, because you can pretty much do everything in your info windows right now in a Maps API site. I mean, you can put JavaScript, Flash, all sorts of stuff in there, and there's varying degrees of support for that. I know Earth does not support Flash, right? And maps.google.com does, or sometimes does? Okay, well, so I would say for your info windows, you should be careful about what you put in there. I wouldn't put JavaScript in there. Okay, you did? Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure if we were allowing all Flash now or just certain domains, but so we may allow Flash, but I think you should put your content either as text or photo. I wouldn't rely on Flash just in case it's not supported in everything that parses these files. And obviously a text. I always love images. When I'm searching on maps.google.com, I don't go anywhere unless I see a photo or image. So I recommend using those two elements more than anything else.
Well, thank you very much. I think the KML is exciting.
Thanks.
Hi, my question has two parts. The first one is submitting the KML files. Is it done basically the same way you would submit an HTML file or a list that points to a bunch of KML files?
It's just, I mean, you know about the webmaster tools. It's done the same way. It's just the same sitemap that you use on your domain to refer to everything else in your domain. So I guess the sitemaps I showed, they only had KML in there. But a real sitemap would have, all the HTML pages in your site, and it would have all the KMLs in your site. So you usually have, it's just one sitemap for your whole site, and then you can put that under, I think if you actually put that under your domain name directly, Google will automatically find that, but you can also submit that to like the Google Webmaster tools, and they'll, make sure that they catch that.
So it's exactly the same tools as regular web search and webmasters. Nothing special about it.
And then the second question is, or the second part is, when let's say the KML file is generated dynamically, and let's say can it be behind an ASPX page, which just pumps out the XML, or does it have to have a KML extension, or do you need to MIME type it to set the headers as you're serving it up?
I think plain text would work for the MIME type.
Okay, so the extension itself does not matter then?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You can try it, and if we don't find you, I mean, to be safe, I would put the.
Yeah, so
it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and we're not officially supporting it anyway. We made a certain point, but just make sure that you have a decent copy of the KML, and that's what we'll index for now.
Do you currently support GeoSearches for like a line or polygon KML file? Or is it just points?
So we index lines and polygons, at least in KML. So it's in our index, but the searcher, we're still working on improving the search to fully support searching for lines and polygons.
Currently it only returns points?
Yes, it will return points, and then when you click through to and open it either on your site or in our KML or GeoRSS reader on the maps, you can actually see the line or the polygon. But it wouldn't be shown on the immediate search result.
Do you currently index dynamic content, for example, like a PHP-generated XML, or? No,
not yet.
Okay.
So that's exactly so it seems to be coming from a lot of people, and we're aware that that's an issue. What are we doing with dynamic data and with highly updatable geosources? And we're working on it, but currently this is not supported yet.
Would it be possible if I had a KML that dealt with data only in the San Francisco area, but it was PHP generated? So on the outside I said this data is within this box, for example. And then when in the future someone searches in that box for, I don't know, train lines, then it would know that, oh, well, he's looking in this box, we'll give him this result in my KML, which is dynamic, would end up showing up. Cool.
That's a good suggestion.
I'll put it on the blog. Thanks.
Excellent. That's the way to go. Thanks.
Two parts to this question. One is, how much of the content do you index in a KML file? So I'm guessing you're reading the description, but are you also following the link that I supply and looking at that page as well, or is it really just the content of the KML?
It's the content of the KML. We may follow the link for other reasons like ranking or other stuff, but indexing per se, we're only indexing whatever appears on the KML, including all level, doc level, feature level, description, Whatever on the KML will index it.
Okay. And second question, of course, we know there's lots of spatial data that is not in these formats yet. And you may or may not have plans to index that someday. But have you come across any tools that either convert or perhaps even summarize data in these other formats into KML or GeoRSS?
So the question was, how can you convert other data formats to KML or GeoRSS? That's a good question, and maybe there's someone in the Google team in the audience that can help. But I know that at least on, I know that maybe you'll have a different answer, but I think that ESRI are offering plugins that allows you to convert shapefiles to KML. And other companies are offering, I'm not aware of all of the offerings, but I know that we see more and more converters that are used to generate those files.
Right.
If anyone in the audience has.
Search for shape to KML, SHP to KML, and I believe that's the script. I mean, shapefile is definitely the prevalent one that we see out there. And I think that's what most people use to convert it.
If it's anything else, you could look for FME. FME does a lot of the esoteric formats as well.
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
Who's building a pipe for CSV to KML?
So there's actually tons of useful pipes that are, I saw that they're actually outputting KML.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah, that's another good solution.
If you go to GeoCommons, it'll convert shapefile to KML and keep all the attributes that are in the shapefile.
Where is that?
GeoCommons.com.
Oh, GeoCommons. Nice.
GeoCommons.
All right. That's a good site.
I'm thrilled with the tools you've got for showing in 3D, but a lot of our data is also got the fourth dimension of time in it, and I'm dealing like with the earthquake site with weather data. Is there I heard a rumor that maybe there'd be some sort of timestamp built into this thing ultimately, and the day might come where we could actually have a slider and do some things in time. Is that?
Well, that's a rumor at that point. We are very interested in the time dimension, but there's nothing specific I can talk about now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm back. Hey. I didn't want to hog the line there. What you talked about today, this indexing, is that available in the Google search appliance right now?
That's a good question. So the question is it available in the search appliance? And the answer is no. It's not available in the search appliance today. And
but I bet
we know that there's tons of interesting geospatial content in the enterprise. But again, today is not available in the GeoSearch appliance.
And that's probably not something you can talk about.
I mean, again, lots of the things that you mentioned are like somewhere in our mind, but again, there's nothing specific that I can talk about. I will be happy to get any feedback, and I should have maybe started with this. We'll be happy to get any feedback that you guys have. I'm personally coming from the GIS industry. I know that there's tons of questions about time and enterprise and like syndication and other questions, and we would love to get your feedback to sort of digest it and understand where we want to take it, because in the end we want to make it useful for you guys so your content can be discovered, so the user can get relevant answers and go to your data sites. So
thanks again.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So does the order in the KML file matters? Does the search engine think that marker on the earlier part of KML is more important than the marker on the later part of KML?
So the question is, that's a good question. So the question about cascading atom attribution, and again, this is a beta spec that we put out there, so we're still open to feedback. But what we're thinking about right now is to do cascading. So if there is offer at the feature level, it will override the offer in the doc level. So you can, if you have a KML with 10 different offers, don't hesitate to put different offers to every feature and then a different offer to the doc level, and we'll know what to do with it.
Were you
and
asking
again, all
about,
I'm
sorry. Were you also asking about the order? Is that what you said? The order of the place marks doesn't matter, right?
No, the order doesn't matter, but the hierarchy does. And all I'm saying now is applicable to GeoSearch It's not applicable to how the client will handle it and will publish this when we'll have something to say on the client side. So the attribution in the KML is a spec proposal. It's in beta. We're kind of putting it to the community to get feedback. We'll support it in GeoSearch, hopefully pretty soon. But it will take a bit until we'll actually integrate it into the client. Okay.
You guys ready to party?
Yeah. So thanks all for coming today. I hope you had a good time.